Welcome, everyone. Today we are going to talk about becoming an enrolled agent. We're going to talk about what it takes, what EAs can do, and how they can add value to your firm. Who am I? Well, most people already know me. My name is Eva Rosenberg. I am an enrolled agent, and I am known as the Internet's tax mama. And in fact, I teach people to become enrolled agents. I come by all of this legitimately through a BA in accounting and an MBA in international business, and I'm the go-to person for publishers and radio folks whenever it comes to tax news. These are the things we're going to be talking about. I don't think I need to read the table of contents to you, but it's a good idea for you to take a quick scan about our topics for today. What is an enrolled agent? A lot of people think it's an IRS agent or an FBI agent or something like that. In fact, enrolled agents, according to what the Internal Revenue Service says, that an enrolled agent is a person who has earned the privilege of representing taxpayers before the IRS by either passing a three-part comprehensive exam covering all kinds of things like individual and business and estate tax returns, or through experience as a former IRS employee. What is an enrolled agent as far as you're concerned? Well, a little bit about history. EAs, in fact, were created before certified public accountants. A lot of people don't know that. We were created right after the Civil War when a whole bunch of people came forward to the federal government asking for reimbursements for the horses that the Union or the Confederate Army confiscated and used in the battles. And a funny thing happened. More people came forward with demands for payments for horses than there were horses in the entire United States. So the Treasury Department decided they needed a little bit of control over the problem and created a group of people who were enrolled on a special roll and authorized to check the veracity of these claims. So EAs came about in 1884. CPAs were established in 1896, and they have really good public relations, so everybody knows about CPAs, and hardly anybody knows what an enrolled agent is. That's why I'm here to talk to you about it. What does it take to become an enrolled agent? Well, first of all, you have to be at least 18 years of age because you have to get a professional tax ID number or a preparer tax ID number, otherwise known as the PTIN. So you have to be at least 18. And you do have to know enough about tax law, practicing taxation, procedure, and ethics to pass 3 really hard IRS examinations. Let me tell you, they are not easy. Even CPAs with years of education need to study intensely if they want to become EAs. And many CPAs do want to become enrolled agents, believe it or not. Then they do a compliance, a background check on the candidates after you pass all those exams. And your own tax returns and your tax payments have to be in compliance. And that doesn't just involve your 1040s, it involves your business tax returns and your payroll tax returns. All have to be in compliance. And that background check generally takes a couple of months. The other thing is, you can't have any tax-related or treasury-related felony convictions on your record. Now, a lot of people ask, but what if I filed bankruptcy in the past? That's okay. That's not even on the application. But if you bankrupted tax debt, that could be a problem. And what I do is have my students get in touch with me before they send in their applications to the IRS, and I help them get past all of those hurdles if they're my graduates. And then it's a whopping $30 application fee once you pass all of the exams, and You only have to renew every 3 years after the first cycle, which is another story, but it's only $30 every 3 years. So once you pass, it doesn't cost a lot to keep your EA. Now, what does it not take to become an EA? Becoming an EA, after all of that work, I'm going to give you some good news. First of all, you don't need a college degree, so you don't need to wait 4 years to become an EA. You don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a 4-year degree to become an enrolled agent. You also don't have to do any internships or apprenticeships, or what some people like to call indentured servitude, working for a CPA firm. All you have to do is to pass that EA exam. And unlike CPAs, you don't have to take any minimum number of college units in tax or accounting to become an enrolled agent or to sit for the EA exam. Once you pass those grueling exams, you can become an EA pretty quickly. I've seen some people get their EA cards after they apply within about 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes 60 days. But the bad news is, on the other hand, is you don't need that college degree or that 2-year apprenticeship. And let me tell you something. I spent my years working in CPA firms and tax offices, and that was some of the best experience and training I ever had. So sometimes it is a little bit scary when people become enrolled agents with no background or training at all, except for training to pass the EA exam. That isn't really enough to go out and practice on your own. You really need some other grounding and some other training. So people who just take one of the software tools like Fast Forward Academy, Gleim, Passkey, or whatever, and just use that to pass the exams without having any previous background and training aren't going to necessarily be the best EAs. They need some seasoning. So once you become an enrolled agent, what does it take to remain an enrolled agent? Well, the good news is, even after you've gotten your EA and you don't have a lot of background, the good news is there is a continuing education requirement. We have to keep learning about taxation, and we have to stay updated on whatever is going on in the tax world. So there's a 3-year cycle during which we have to take 72 hours worth of classes, and at least 6 of those hours have to be in ethics. So we have to take 2 hours of ethics every year. So 72 hours is an average of 24 hours of tax education every single year. Every year there have to be 2 hours of ethics and at least 14 hours of federal tax topics. Now, if you belong to an organization like NAEA, NATP, or any of the other tax societies, they may have higher standards. And that's a really good thing because some of them require at least 30 hours a year of education. And it's important to take that much education to keep up. A lot of us take about 100 hours or more because there is so much to learn. So, what did it used to take to become an enrolled agent? Well, we used to have to take the EA exam. It was previously offered by the IRS just once a year. That's it. And there were 4 exams, and they were given over a period of 2 days. And if you didn't pass, you had to wait a whole other year to take the exams again. So there were 4 exams, but the interesting thing back in the olden days was IRS sent you back your exam booklet with all of your notes and everything, and then a few months later, after they reviewed everything, they released the questions and answers. So now we can take the EA exam. There are 3 exams instead of 4, which sounds like a good thing. Not such a good thing because they compressed 2 of the exams into one, so it's part 2 is a much tougher exam to pass. We can take each one of these three parts, part one, which is individual, part two, which is all the businesses and entities, and part three, which is practice, procedure, and ethics, the representation. We can take each of these exams up to 4 times during the testing window, and the testing window runs from May through February of each year. The exams are harder than they were, and we don't get the answers back. And the database of the exam questions is much larger than it's ever been, and the exams aren't the same. In the past, everybody got the same exam, and we had the printed books. Now, you have a randomized selection of 100 questions for each time that you sit for the exam, and it may be completely different than somebody sitting right next to you taking an EA exam for the same part. They don't publish the questions and answers, and they don't want you to tell anybody about them. But you can finish all 3 exams in one testing window, and even if you have to retake them, you can still finish them in the course of a year. So it's a little bit easier time-wise to become an enrolled agent. So even if you don't pass an exam the first time, they're going to give you your score and let you know how strong or weak you were in the different categories of the exam. And let's say you wanted to go back and study for 2 days and come back in about 2 days. You can reschedule and retake that exam and very probably pass it if you did your homework. But once you've passed the first exam, you have up to 2 years, up to 24 months from that date to complete all 3 of them. And if something intervenes in the middle and you don't quite cover all of those exams, don't quite pass all of those exams, well, you lose the one you passed 2 years ago, and then your time frame starts from the second exam that you passed. You have up to 2 years to finish all 3 from that one, but you're going to have to retake the first one. And you're going to be able to find all the information at prometric.com/IRS. So, what do you have to know in order to become an enrolled agent? Well, there's a lot of work in preparing for the EA exam. First of all, you have to know things like how to arrange for an installment agreement, how to use a power of attorney, how offers and compromise work, how you get people pennies on the dollar, how to go through an audit, and if things don't work out or your clients come to you after they've blown the audit, you need to know how to get an appeals hearing and how and when it's appropriate to file tax court petitions. So what is it worth to become an enrolled agent? Well, a lot of tax professionals that I know over the years have sent me their clients because they're afraid to do IRS audits. They don't know how to do representations and get liens and levies released. They don't know how to get somebody an offer in compromise. So they send that work out, and quite often they might even lose the client. This way, you're going to learn how to handle those things yourself and keep that resolution work in your own office and keep that entire revenue stream and keep the client. How much extra income could this bring to your practice? Well, handling one collections client, somebody who owes a lot of money, whether they need an offer in compromise, whether they need lien removals, typically can add between $3,000 and $5,000 per month. So if you only add one client that has collection problems a month, that can be an extra $50,000 or so a year. If you work with one client who has an audit, instead of sending it to somebody else to take care of, that can add another $3,000 to $5,000 a month, and for one client. So that could add another $50,000 a year. Just these 2 areas that you learn how to do as an enrolled agent, without even getting new clients, could increase the value of your practice, could increase your income by $60,000 to $100,000 a year. So it's well worth it. Plus, Having these skills, having the EA credential allows you to offer additional services to clients.